Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Hi, everyone. This is Cathy filling in for Vincent Finelli. I want to thank Jason, who is engineering our program today. I have Guineith Isaacs with me from Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Cathy. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. The new year is 2 years old, 2 hours old here at the moment.
Well, we haven't had ours yet, so same to you.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a very good one, actually. I think that you could probably say Happy New Year with your tongue in your cheek and be quite comfortable doing so. Yeah. It's the media here in Australia, oh my gosh, they're just total tyrant. All the governments here in Australia. Sydney has just been, chomping at the bit to go into another round of level 4 lockdowns. And probably I think that Melbourne is going to be not too far behind them. So that's how the situation is here in Australia. I don't think it's going to go well. I don't think we're going to have a very happy rest of the summer. And I think that they're using it as an excuse for pure tyranny. But that's all beside the point of what's happening today, but, on the show. But it's just a bit of background.
Sure. What did you want to talk about today, Guineith?
Okay. What I would like to talk about today is basically what you, if you can't leave the city, what you should do. Okay? Because, I've always advised that if you can at all possibly leave the city in this sort of circumstances, then you should do so. But that's not going to be possible for everybody, okay? So you have to have contingency plans in place in order to be able to stay where you are and to, be able to live where you are with a relative degree of comfort, That's just how you have to be. And I hate to say peace and safety, because that's a set of words that, according to Jesus Christ, is cursed. He said when people are saying peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes. And I don't believe that you can live in any city probably in the world at the moment with peace and safety. Okay, and I think that it's an illusion to think that you can. I think that that's a big mistake, to think that you can live in any city in the world at the moment, really with any degree of peace and safety. But for most of the audience, for one reason or another, they feel that they don't have a choice, that they have to stay. And I think that they have to know how to do so to be able to survive with a relative degree of comfort. I think that that's the best way of putting it. Does that make sense, Cathy?
Yeah, Guineith, and I think also that when you're in the city, you're very vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the main reason why I say that if it's at all possible to get out to the countryside, even if that means, even if you haven't got some land in the country, then it may well be that you end up camping in a state forest or on BLM land in America. That may well be what you have to do. But I've detailed in previous broadcasts that there are companies out there who will sell land to you on a rent-to-buy basis, where you put a deposit down on the land of maybe between $300 to $500, maybe $1,000, and then you pay the land off, or you rent the land for a certain number of years, and then you pay it off at a peppercorn amount. And you may be able to get the land under those terms for a total cost of between $20,000 and $50,000. But that $20,000 and $50,000 is not paid all at once. It's paid out over a period of 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 years. That I think that is going to be the best option if people genuinely feel as if they have no money. Even if they feel like that they're completely broke, I think that most people at a stretch could come up with between $300 and $500. Does that make sense, Cathy?
Oh, I think they could. I think if you put your mind to it, you can save a little here and a little there, and within a few months you could come up with that money. The other thing, Guineith, is we have some areas here. They're not really in this city. They're sort of kind of starting to get in the outlying areas, but we have some areas where they have a community garden. I don't know how feasible that would be, but there's a church that you could, I think it's $10, and you get your little piece of property there, and you can garden right there. So if you don't have a space, maybe you're in an apartment or you're in a condo and you can't garden, if you're not too far, that might be something, at least you could grow something. And a lot of those people share. Once they're together, they'll share their produce with the other person, and you sort of build a little community with them.
Yeah, well, that might be an option for a lot of people. And the other thing is, it does enable you to network and make friends. And the problem for a lot of people in modern cities is they literally have no friends, okay? No real friends, I mean. They've got the people who live next door to them that they don't really know, and they've got people that they work with, but they're like colleagues and they're not really friends, and they work with them, but they don't see them out of hours, and they don't really maybe even get along, or maybe they don't even like their work colleagues, but they have to work with them, so they put on a smile and, just bear it, if that makes sense. But they don't really have friends in the way that people used to have friends. Do you know what I mean? And being involved in a community garden is a way that you can make real, genuine friendships, and you can help to supply your own fruit and vegetables as well. And I think depending on the community garden, they may even allow you to keep a few chickens or a few rabbits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the one community garden that I saw, they had some chickens, they had some turkeys, wild turkeys there, and they had areas where they had like a raspberry patch, and each person had like a defined number, and then you could plant your garden there, and you could pick a small one all the way up to a pretty good sized one. But I think that's an option for people who can't leave the city. There's also container gardens in the weather, when the weather's a little bit better, and you can do pots or 5-gallon buckets and learn how to do that. Maybe get the reading material and the resources so that you know how to do it and start learning for us it's winter. So start learning now and get going in the spring.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good idea. And I emailed you a bit earlier because I didn't always live on a acreage in the country. I used to live in the suburbs, and I emailed you a bit earlier with how I used to do that. So I'll go into a bit of detail about how I used to do it for the class out there, because I think that they would be interested in that. I used to have 800 square meters of residential land with a house on it in Geraldton in Western Australia. And that is a part of the world that is absolutely beautiful. And it breaks my heart that I can't be there anymore. But, you know, what it is what it is. And I'm not going to go into the details of what happened on this broadcast. But we lived quite near the sea on this, just under a quarter of an acre of land. And of that, about half the land was taken up by the house. Or I would say probably about a third of the land actually was taken up by the house. And about 2/3 of the land was garden. And I could do what I wanted with that garden. So what I ended up doing with it was it was kind of funny how this happened. We had a septic tank in the backyard, and about after I moved on to the land, the septic trenches decided that they were going to give way all through the backyard, okay? And that meant that I had big ditches all through the backyard, and I got an excavation expert in to see what was happening with my backyard, and he said, your septic trenches have given way. You'll need a new septic tank. And I said, all right. So he said, you could put a new set of trenches in. And I said, no, I think I would like a deep soak well, okay? So when you've got a septic tank, you have the tank itself, and then you have to have something to take the overflow, because sometimes septic tanks overflow, and if you don't have something to take up the overflowing juices, let's say, that come out of the septic tank, it ends up being a really unhygienic situation in your backyard, okay? So you've got to have either trenches or a deep soak well. So I opted for the deep soak well. But that meant that I still had all these trenches all through my backyard. And, what happened was I decided, that the ground there in the old trenches was really, really good. And it was really quite fertile. So I decided that I would dig the soil out of the trenches because it had composted over a long period of time. And
we'll be right back, Gwen, if I hear the music.
I'll have to tell you what I did after we get back from the break. Hello, this is Gwen speaking. I'm not sure where Cathy is at the moment.
I'm here, Gwen.
Okay, I just wasn't sure where you were. No, that's fine. You carry on.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm here with Gwyneth, filling in for Vincent, and I appreciate you being here with us, Gwyneth. Can you please continue telling us about your septic system and how you managed to make that your benefit there?
Okay. I actually managed to, in that situation, I managed to make lemons into lemonade. I dug out some of that area and I made a pond over the top of the new soak well, which had a cover on it underneath the ground. So basically I dug the soil out that the man had just, the excavator man had just, put the soil back in on top of the concrete cover of the soak well. So I dug that soil out and I dumped it into the old septic trenches. Okay? So I had this big hole just where the new soak well had been installed, because that was an area where the soil was quite shallow. It was only about 18 inches deep. And I thought to myself, 18 inches is not very much soil. It was a very hot climate during the summer with very sandy soil. And I thought to myself, I just know that I'm always going to struggle to grow things there. So I just dug that whole area out and I put the soil into the old septic trenches, filled them in with that soil, and I installed a pond liner in that hole from the local big box hardware store, and I put a pond there. And I filled it with rainwater that I was collecting in a enormous tank that I had installed on my driveway. And by enormous, I mean 23,500 litres. So that's almost, that would actually 6,000 gallons, almost 6,000 gallon tank that I had sitting in my driveway outside of my garage. I had a double garage and I had the tank sitting in front of one of the garage bays, and the other garage bay was still there and still available for me to be able to use the garage. And that was the water that I was using for my garden, and I was using it to keep my pond topped up. And each week I would go out and I would, set up the hoses from the tank, and I would go and top my pond up, and I would sit out there and I had a little pump and a little artificial creek set up from another hole that one of my son's friends came over one day and decided to do some digging in the backyard underneath a date palm that was up in a back corner. And he decided to do so much digging that there was in one afternoon, there was a hole that was big enough to make another pond, to make a second pond. And so I dug a trench from between those two ponds, and I set up a pump in one pond to pump water up this slight hill to the second pond, and then it would flow back to the first pond through this, little stream system that I made up with some more pond liner that I just lay out, and I lined it with rocks, and it was beautiful. And I used this whole system just to be aesthetic, but also it helped to keep my garden green and watered and humid. And actually,
I hear the music. We're going to the bottom of the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. This is Cathy. I'm here with Guineith. Guineith, I wanted to tell you that I thought it was very ingenious and creative for you to get the huge water tank in your driveway and use your water.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. The thing is, I actually bought this house, and it was in a reasonably poor area. Okay, so buying that house was one of the worst mistakes that I ever made in all my life. But that's another story. But it meant that really nobody cared what you did with your land, because a lot of people just didn't do anything at all with their block. of land. But, other people, they actually put in some quite nice gardens. But the thing about Geraldton is it's got very, very hot wind. They have a wind that's there that's called the Doctor, okay? And the Doctor has two parts. That's the wind that, the first part is at about 2 a.m. in the morning, every morning, from about October to about February or March. What happens is you get this hot wind blows in from the east across the whole of that area of West Australia, from Geraldton right down to Perth. So it's an area, maybe even further north, an area of between 300 and 500 kilometres of coastline, maybe about 300 miles of coastline, where the wind from the outback gets sucked out to the ocean between about 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. every day. So it means that the mornings are extremely windy and hot and dry, and the moisture gets sucked out of everything. And then at about 2 p.m., the wind turns around and blows from the sea inland from about 2 p.m. until about 2 a.m. You've got this wonderful sea breeze that blows, but it never quite makes up for the fact that you've got this extremely hot, dry wind that blows every single day and just sucks the moisture out of everything. But I had an advantage living in the suburbs because I had houses all the way around me, and I know that asbestos is no good. Okay, I know that it's really got a lot of bad things about it, but there was a lot of asbestos mined in West Australia, and to this day there's a lot of asbestos fences in the suburbs in West Australia, and my house was completely surrounded by asbestos fences, which were very, very good at blocking that really, really hot wind from the east, okay? So basically, it funneled, the fences were about 5 or 6 feet tall, and they just funneled the wind straight across the top of the backyard. And because I had the pond system in my backyard, there was always a layer of humidity near the level of the ground, which meant that my garden was always a lot greener than everybody else's garden, because I was the only one with a 6,000-gallon tank sitting in my driveway. Nobody else thought to do that. But the other thing about that tank, and the real reason why I installed it, was to be an emergency water supply in case anything went wrong. Because even when I was living in Geraldton, even when I was in the suburbs, I was beginning to think in a mindset of preparedness of what I was going to do if the Capriola hit the propeller and I was stuck in the suburbs. That's the whole point of the conversation. And so I began to play with various preparedness-minded concepts. That included putting the tank in my driveway. And I don't know if the tank is still there or not. I think that I don't own that house anymore, and good riddance. I sold that house and I used the money from it to buy the farm that I'm on now. But whereas back then I had 6,000 gallons of water storage, almost 6,000 gallons of water storage. Here I have another 23,500 litre tank, and I have a 17,500 litre tank, and that's my domestic water supply. And it's actually pretty much the same system, except that these tanks have a gravity pressure tower that I pumped the water out of these tanks, and I pumped them into an IBC cube that is sitting on top of a water tower. And that and that IBC cube is plumbed into my house, and that provides the water pressure for my house. Because whereas in Geraldton I was still on the grid, I still had my domestic water supply from the city, and I had the option of city sewage, although I never connected, and I had electricity, grid electricity, that I eventually installed a system. I think it's called a transfer switch, where I could disconnect from the grid and have my whole electrical supply operated from an auxiliary power source that I would plug in to this particular switch. And that was all installed by an electrician. It was all done properly. But I used that auxiliary electrical supply to begin to experiment with off-grid solar power systems. And I ended up getting, about 1,500 watts of panel installed, about 1,000 or 1,500 watts of panels. And I had about a 1,500 watt inverter. Actually, I think I ended up getting about a 2 or 3 kilowatt inverter in the end. I did get a 1,500 watt inverter, but then I bought a proper domestic inverter, so that would operate from a 24-volt battery, and that would actually generate a really usable amount of 240-volt power, so that I could run things like washing machines if I had to, and blenders and things like this. And microwave ovens. I did have a microwave oven back in the day. I don't anymore. I don't like microwave ovens now. I didn't particularly like them before, but I thought, well, it might be useful to have one. But I would buy batteries when they would come on special. I'd go down to the battery store and I would keep asking, and then they would tell me when they would come on special. And I was gradually building up my battery bank. And I would do so by buying one battery at a time. And these batteries would cost between $500 and $600 to $800 or something like that each. But sometimes they would come on special and they would sell from between $300 and $400. And so when that would happen, the guy at the battery store would sort of say, hey, we've got that special going on the batteries. You want some? And I said, yeah, I'll have some. And, so that was how I was operating back in the day. But the thing is this is how people can begin to experiment with off-grid living when they're still on the city. The transfer switch, that costs between $300 and $400 to install, okay? There's no getting around it. If you decide to, I would recommend having preparedness on a hobby basis, okay? Because then it becomes less intimidating and it becomes more interesting. And I mean, some people, some people play with computers in their spare time. Some people learn musical instruments or languages. And you can treat preparedness like a hobby. And that way your interest is maintained. And it's sort of, if you're worried about what other people around you are going to think, you can just explain it away to them. Hey, it's my hobby, I tinker with solar power systems and water supplies. And you don't even have to go into the fact that it's preparedness-based, okay? Or you can just explain that away to the neighbours, and that way the neighbours aren't going to think that you're from some foreign planet or something. And then you say, well, what's with this big tank that's appeared in your driveway? And you say, well, I like my garden. And I like to have a low water bill, so I collect the rainwater from my roof. And I use it to water my garden. And they'll go, oh. And then over a period of time, they'll see your backyard turn into a jungle, and they'll go, oh, you really do like your garden, don't you? And they say, yeah. But you don't have to tell them that all the beautiful flowers that you're growing and all the vines and everything is all producing food. And that the pigeons that you keep, that you're actually going down there from time to time to the pigeon house and taking the pigeon and taking it into the kitchen and processing it into roast pigeon or pigeon soup, which is something else that I used to do when I was in Geraldton. I had a pigeon house because the person who lived there before me used to do racing pigeons, and he left some of his pigeons behind. He asked me if I would like some, and I said, yeah, I'll have some. I had no intention of ever racing them, but eventually I was eventually moving over from keeping the racing pigeons to keeping meat pigeons. You know, they're about twice the size of racing pigeons. They eat probably just a little bit more food. They breed at the same rate, but they've got a carcass of twice the size. And, of course, I was using their manure, and I would go maybe once every 3 to 6 months, and I would go and clean out the pigeon house, and I would use the pigeon manure on my garden. And this is how anybody can do this and have quite a significant degree of self-sufficiency while they're living in the suburbs. I can hear music again. I think that we're heading into the last segment of this hour. So, yeah, I'll see you on the other side of the break, Cathy.
Okay. See you, Gwyneth.
Hey, this is Jason. Sorry to interrupt here, but I just got a call from Vincent. He wanted me to let you both know that he's very impressed and proud of how you're doing the broadcast here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, you're live, Cathy.
Yeah.
I don't know if... Yeah, hello.
Oh, Gwyneth, can I make a comment, please?
Yes.
You were talking about the water, and I live rural, and I have winds really strong, too, so my garden tends to dry out. But a couple things that we did is I have 2 rain barrels. I have one off the barn, which fills up extremely fast, and then I have one off the house. And I use that. I have actually 2 gardens. But last year, we had about a 6-week period of time where it was very dry, and I conned my husband into hooking up a utility pump, and we would start it in the morning, and I would draw from my pond, and each area I would let run for about a good hour to really soak it. And my garden did really well, all things considered, with the hot, dry weather that we had. And I grow a lot of raspberries, and I didn't keep track like I should have. I kind of lost track, but I had at least 100 quarts in my freezer, and that doesn't even include what I gave away. I gave away quite a bit, but that's an idea. If someone has a pond, I have a half-acre pond, so I was able to do that at 22 feet deep in the middle. But if someone doesn't have it, like you said, you could do rain barrels on all of your catch or your gutters.
Yeah, you could do that. The reason why I chose such an enormous tank to put in my driveway, and to give some idea of the scale of this, if you think of the standard width of a suburban driveway, that was approximately the width of the tank. So it was actually a really, really tight squeeze to get it up the side of the suburban block, up the driveway, to sit at the garage at the end of the driveway. That was a tight squeeze, and there were inches to spare on each side when it came time to install that tank. But I'm glad that I did it. The reason why I chose such a huge tank is the same reason why I've got so much water storage here, because it's practically the same problem here. Sometimes, both in Geraldton and where I am here at the moment, during the summer, it's very common for us not to get any rain at all for 5 or 6 months, half the year. It's absolutely common. It's not even rare. That's normal for us to get no rain at all for 5 or 6 months of the year. So in this sort of situation, if you are living in that sort of area, so in the United States, if you were living somewhere like New Mexico or Phoenix, that might be maybe LA. That might be a similar type of climate to where we were living and where I actually live now. But the difference with where I live now is I live around about 200 miles inland, whereas when I was living in Geraldton, I was living literally right on the coast. I was within walking distance from the beach. So you had no frost there. But, yes, if you're living in an area with high rainfall, rain barrels is definitely going to be an advantage for you. But you might want to, rain barrels is fine, but you might end up having 20 or 30 rain barrels lined up in your backyard, one after the other after the other. And you might get to the point where you think, gee, maybe it would be just easier if I just installed a rainwater tank. And you can get long, thin rainwater tanks, and if you put rebar, if you install, after you put the tank in, the long, thin water tank, and it might be about 2 or 3 meters tall, but it's only about 1 meter wide, and it might be about 3 to 5 or 6 meters long. And you could install that along one of your garden fences, or you could install that as a divider wall to separate the utility area of your garden where you store things like lawnmowers and garden equipment and spare posts and wire from the...
Guineith, we're headed to the top of the hour. News break.
Oh, my gosh. These broadcasts are so short.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Okie doke. I'll see you later then. Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaacs in the seat this hour, and this hour I'm going to be interviewing Cathy. Cathy is still on the line in Ohio, and I'm going to be speaking with her about what we should all do what we need to purchase in order to help us get through some really difficult times that are actually just down the track chronologically in the new year, I think. And she would like to speak about some preparedness type items that we need to buy. So would you like to share that information with us, Cathy?
Sure. I have a huge long list, so I will try to go through one at a time and try to explain some of the uses that I can do with them or I use them for or would be good to have on hand. The first one, I would say there's something called kinesiology tape. It's about probably 1.5 inches wide, and they do make a regular and a waterproof, but you can put them on your skin. Normally, if it's like a foot, or an ankle or your elbow or the back of your arm, anywhere where you have like the trauma. And you can look online, and there's all kinds of physical therapists that show you how to put the tape on. It's not terribly expensive, but I would buy 2 or 3 rolls of that and have it on hand. Now, what I've done when I've had to use it before is I'll take a piece of first aid tape and I put it on each end so that when you shower, it doesn't come off. Otherwise, it will curl off quicker. Now, the waterproof stays a little bit better, but I would say get some kinesiology tape. It really does seem to work wonders.
Okay. I have actually something similar that I use here. And I actually, I kind of came by this product, kind of by accident. Because one thing that I have here is I have horses. And what I do is I get young horses, unbroken horses, and also horses that need re-education. And I re-educate them, and then I either keep them or I sell them on. And the ones that I sell on after they've been broken in or re-educated, they help to pay my hay bill for the other ones that I keep. Okay? And horses, they often need to have bandages on their hocks. Okay? So if you are looking at, show jumpers or eventers, or any sort of horse like race horses that are in quite heavy work, you'll notice that they have bandages on their hocks. And that is to prevent a condition called bursitis, which is the synovial fluid in the horse's joint leaks out of its membrane and it creates a swelling in the horse's joint. But to prevent that from happening, you bandage the joint before the exercise they're called horse bandages or vet wraps, okay, which I think is something similar to your kinesiology tape. But the thing about the horse bandages, all you need to do is go into a horse supply store and ask for them, because every horse supply store has them because they're disposable. You use them once and then you throw them out or you put them in the fire or whatever. They're actually they're made of latex. They're quite good for lighting fires with, which is sort of handy. Handy piece of info, so they don't have to go to waste at the end of the day. But you can, if we have injuries, us humans have injuries, I get a horse bandage out of the box and I wrap the injured area with the horse bandage. And I grow comfrey here. I think we mentioned this last week. I grow comfrey in my garden. And even as recently as yesterday, I bumped my finger head on into the, paving stones that paved the floor of our house. We've got concrete paving stones as flooring on our house. And I bumped my finger face down into the paving stones, and it hurt. It really hurt. And so what I did was I got one of these horse bandages, and like you mentioned, they're really cheap. They cost about $5 each, okay? And I wrapped my finger, and I bound it next to the other finger with a splint. I wrapped my finger in a comfrey leaf, and then I wrapped the finger and the finger next to it to splint it with a horse bandage, and then I wrapped the rest of the horse bandage, some of it, down around my hand to sort of immobilize it, give it a bit of a chance to rest and heal. Does that make sense, Cathy? I think that these kinesiology tapes might be something similar. Oh, and the horse bandages are also waterproof as well, and they're self-adhesive. They're highly self-adhesive, because they've got to be for...
That's exactly what these are. Guineith. They're real sticky on one side, and you can stretch them. So if you need to wrap it around your foot or your ankle, you can start and gently stretch them and protect that area. Yeah, that's right. But that's what we use. It must be a human version of the veterinary product. They've been used in the horse industry for forever. Anyone who's had anything whatsoever to do with horses has come across these self-adhesive bandages. And they're like water out there. But I'm the same. I buy 20 at a time in a box from my local horse supply store. And so it might cost $100 for a box of 20 bandages, but I only have to buy them about once every 6 months or so, because I don't use them every single day. Does that make sense, Cathy? Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that, Guineith. That might be more cost-effective than getting the ones that I use. I will definitely check out our farm center out here. Yeah, the farm supply store will definitely have them. Anywhere that sells horse tack, okay, we'll stock these bandages. You just need to go in and say, you got horse bandages? And they come in a variety of colors, because horse people tend to be adolescent girls. So if you want hot pink or fluorescent green, I'm sure that they can even accommodate you there. Well, I usually go for black or blue or brown, that's just a bit of humour there. But they are very good value. And the thing is, whereas the ones you're talking about, you said they were like maybe 3 meters long. These horse bandages, I've never worked out exactly how long they are, but they're certainly longer than 3 meters. These are really, really long on a single roll. And it might be, 15 or 20 feet long. Because sometimes you've got to wrap more than the hock. And a horse's leg is quite long. And if you've got to wrap all the way up, then, you've got to wrap all the way up. So they've got to be a lot longer. So it may well be a much more cost-effective way of doing it, of getting a similar product. Does that make sense, Cathy? Sure. Can I add one more item that I want to make sure that I mention I think would be good to have on hand? I think those orthopedic shoes that you can buy if you have a hairline fracture on your foot or you injure your foot, I actually ordered one, and I don't think it was all that expensive. I think it was right around $18, $20. I just think one of them would be good to have on hand in case you have a hairline fracture on your foot or you somehow injure your foot. It would protect it from bumping and bending the wrong way if it's not supposed to be bent. So I think that's a good choice to purchase one of those. That's a really good idea. By the orthopedic shoes, do you mean the moon boots? Well, the one that I'm talking about, Guineith, it just looks like a flat shoe, and it just has like the Velcro that goes over the top, so your foot doesn't bend. I know that the big boots that they have are. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not sure when you use those and when you use the others. But I know if you have just a hairline fracture or like a tendon injury, sometimes they'll put you in just that flat shoe. And so I thought, well, it's for me. They're kind of universal. They come in like small, medium, and large. But for a woman my size, probably most women could wear that. I think men would be a little bit bigger, but I just figured if something happens, typically they take an X-ray and then they have you order one of those shoes, or they give you one of those shoes. So if you knew you had a hairline fracture and you had one on hand, or what if you can't go to the doctor at that time, or you can't afford it? You could wear one and see if it starts to heal, or later on get an X-ray. So to me, that was something I thought, that's typically all they do anyway, is to tell you you have a hairline fracture and to wear one of those orthopedic shoes.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good idea. And can I mention something that might be a good idea for people to get along that same line? Would that be okay?
Oh, sure.
Actually, this is something actually that I just ordered on eBay today. Okay, you can go on eBay and you can order. If you go on eBay and you search for U.S. Army Field Surgical Kit, then you will come up with a minor surgical kit that has just about everything that you would need to conduct a surgery in the field if you were in a collapse situation. Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaacs speaking, and I'm speaking with Cathy today about, what preparedness type items we might need to consider getting in the event of, we should be getting them now, but we need to, think about what we need now, because I think that there could be, or there probably is going to be in 2021, a situation where the coprolor hits the propeller. And I was mentioning just before the break that I've just purchased a field surgery, U.S. military-style field surgery kit. And you might think, well, there's no way that I would ever need one of those. But you would be really surprised. If you're out working in the field and you happen to stand on a decent-sized stick and you can't get to a hospital and that stick has gone up on the inside of you might need a surgical kit to actually remove that big splinter. You may need a surgical kit for that purpose. And if you can't get or if you manage to lacerate yourself on a piece of broken glass or an old beer can or something like that, I don't know, or an old piece of farm equipment, then the one thing that's not in these surgical kits is sutures. So you will have to order the sutures separately, and you will have to also order something called oil of arnica 100% cold pressed, okay? And the oil of arnica is a local anesthetic, and you dab it around, not on the proposed wound site. If you have to do a minor surgery, I'm talking about in the absence of medical care, where there has been a complete systemic collapse, where there are no hospitals, and you have to perform some type of surgery to save somebody's life. So I'm not talking about that everybody should go doing operations on everybody when we still have a hospital system, because obviously that would be stupid. I'm absolutely not recommending that. But we are likely heading into a situation where there are no surgical and hospital systems, and where people may need to have surgeries performed, and to have a surgical kit, local anesthetic, and sutures on hand could well be the difference between life and death for somebody out there. Does that make sense, Cathy? Oh, and betadine. Big bottles of betadine. 500 ml bottles of betadine.
Yeah, I had that on my list too.
Isn't it amazing how we all think alike? nobody's telling us to think alike. We're just coming to the same conclusions.
Yeah. Guineith, did you say oil of arnica? Is it Arnica? Yes. Okay.
Yes. But pure, 100% pure, cold pressed. So not the massage oil, not the diluted stuff. Okay. It's sold as a hair tonic for mixing with things like grapeseed oil or olive oil, or as a massage oil for you to make up your own grapeseed oil or massage oil or whatever. But 100% pure, cold-pressed oil of arnica is actually a really, really effective local anesthetic. Okay? Meaning, if you need to do a minor surgery where you need a local anesthetic, you can dab the oil of arnica. By the way, this is not medical advice. This is advice. This is just information for what you need to do if you need to have a local anesthetic in a without rule of law grid down situation. Like, for instance, if you need to remove a splinter, you dab the oil of arnica around the splinter site and you wait for 10 minutes and it will act as a local anesthetic and you will be able to pull that splinter out without it creating a whole lot of pain and trauma, further trauma for the person who's injured. Does that make sense? Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaacs speaking here, and I'm speaking today with Cathy. And I better let you get on with your list, Cathy. Fire away.
Okay. Guineith, the other thing that I have purchased is I purchased a capsule machine. It's a little manual thing where you use your capsules and you can put in your own supplements, your own powders. And so you can buy them online, the capsules, much cheaper than going to a health food store for the most part. I have one. It's there's a 0 and a 00, and I believe there's probably more sizes than that, but the most common are those two sizes. So what I've done is I have a capsule machine, and like I bought organic turmeric or any of your other supplements you would like to do. It's much cheaper than buying the capsules already made at the store. So I go online and I find my best price, and I do it that way. Another one you can use in there is like activated charcoal. You can make up all your own. Now, it's kind of messy, but it doesn't take that long. You just put your capsules in and you put your powder in, and there's a little flat piece that you kind of move back around and fill up your capsules, and then you put the lids on and pop them out. So that's something I think that is much cheaper, because I've noticed the price of supplements has gone up quite a bit. So when I'm getting my things now, I'm buying a lot of mine in powdered form or bulk, and either just mixing them with a little water and consuming them that way, or I put them in the capsule.
That's actually a really, really good idea, and I hadn't actually considered that. You know, that might be something that I add to my shopping list in the future, you know, because, capsules. I've noticed that the price of supplements is just gone through the roof. You're absolutely right there. Anything else that you would recommend that we get?
Sure. Another thing is getting vodka so you can make your own tinctures or your own homeopathic remedy. Normally what I have learned for my homeopathic remedies is I get a sterile amber jar. I put the distilled water in there. I put a couple drops of the vodka in there, and then I put my homeopathic remedy in there, and I dilute it. And it's kind of a long procedure, so I'm not going to go into that right now. You can do a search on how you do it, but you can also use it for making any of your own tinctures. And you don't need that much.
Yeah. I make a lot of my own tinctures. And one that's a real favourite of mine, I've got a few that are real favourites, and I grow the herbs in my own garden, and then I do this process. One of them is marigold infusion in vodka, okay? And it only has to be 70 to 80 proof. I don't know how low you can go, but generally I get, which is about 37.5% alcohol by volume. So it's sort of a pretty sort of standard vodka that you get from your liquor store. Marigold infusions is one, okay, and the other one is comfrey. And what I do, I think I described this the other week when I was speaking with you, but in case there's new people here, I'll describe it again. I get the comfrey leaves, I fold them in half and I roll them up, and I put them into the jar of liquor, vodka, or it can be gin, it can be rum, it can be any of the hard liquors. As long as it's at least 70 or 80 proof, it should be fine. And, I remember doing this, I go into sometimes about my past life, that I was a pirate surgeon, Dr. George Wilson. And I remember doing that in my past life, and my parents were almost teetotaler, and they got more teetotal as they got older. So we didn't have any hard liquor in the house, but I tried to make these sorts of things with what we had in the house, which I was trying to make them with turpentine. I was trying to make them with methylated spirits, and I tried every chemical, household backyard garden shed chemical that you could probably imagine to try and do this. And I can assure you that the only thing that really works is hard liquor, ethanol. So vodka, gin, rum, or something of that order, whiskey or something like that is the only thing that really works. But I was doing that as a child, and you might think that that's a messed up thing for a kid to do, but I didn't even realize that I was doing past life. I was acting out my past life, and it was only later on that I really, that it occurred to me what I was doing after I found out about Dr. Wilson. So that's why I was doing that. But yeah, this is it. And to learn how to make alcoholic tinctures is going to be an alcoholic infusions. Some of them you can drink, some of them you probably shouldn't drink. Comfrey is one that you probably shouldn't drink. You get the comfrey leaves and you roll them up and you store them in mason jars full of liquor. And when it's not comfrey season, you can get the comfrey leaves out and you can use them exactly as you would use fresh comfrey. Okay, but like, for instance, in the middle of winter when comfrey doesn't grow, and that is something that can be really, really vital, because if you've got serious bruising or if you've got a broken limb in in an emergency situation, and you bind that with some of your horse bandages or kinesiology bandages and a splint, then you're going to save that person's arm, or you're going to potentially save that person's leg by binding a comfrey leaf into the wound, because you will cut the healing time by 2/3 if you bind comfrey leaves into the wound, no matter what wound it is. And as well as that, you can also take the liquor that the comfrey has been soaking in, and you can soak it into a wad of cotton, and you can use it as a healing poultice for things like bruises, for staunching blood. That's the other thing that comfrey is good for. It's like a medicine chest in a single herb. But we talked about this the other week, so I'm going to shut up and let you get on with your list because I think that's really important, Cathy. Sorry about that.
Oh,
but
no, that's great advice. I never thought about using them and folding them in half and storing them in the mason jars. My brother grows a huge patch of it, and he's always asking me, do I want any? And I've taken it and made a salve out of it. But what he did the last couple years is he takes his comfrey and he puts them in huge garbage cans and he makes a tea. And he uses it then as part of his fertilizer in his garden.
Yeah, it's marvelous. It's absolutely marvelous.
This year I'm going to go over and get a whole bunch of it and put them in garbage cans and let them set. I think he lets them set for 3 or 4 weeks, and then he uses the water, strains it and uses the water, and he puts it down, and his garden does fabulous. So that's a great thing that I think comfrey can be used for also. But your ideas were great, Guineith.
And I didn't learn that from any books. That's a past life memory. From when I was Dr. Wilson, I used to do that because that was one of my favorite remedies in that life that I remember. And I remember doing that, and I had this past life memory, and I said, gee. And I began doing it, and lo and behold, it worked, And so, like I say, I've never seen that in a book, but I remember doing it. So, if I ever come across it in a 300 or 400-year-old medical text, I'm going to be totally stoked. I'm going to be so happy because I've never seen anybody talk about this, but I've done it and it works. So I'm sharing that information with you because we're on the topic. And comfrey is, like I say, it's a medical chest that you can grow in your garden. It staunches the flow of blood in minutes. It's a literal lifesaver. If you have somebody with a serious laceration, they can bleed out in 4 minutes. Okay? If you pack that wound with comfrey leaves, you will staunch the flow of blood from that wound in seconds, even if it's a very, very serious wound. And, of course, you need to apply pressure, okay? So you need to either use a tourniquet or a pressure bandage. When you apply the pressure bandage, you pack comfrey leaves into the wound, and then you bind the pressure bandage, and you can take it off. You can take the pressure bandage off after, 3 or 4 days. Like I say, here's our regular disclaimer. This is not medical advice. I'm not saying that I'm a doctor. I'm saying that this is something you can do in an emergency collapse first aid situation. I have to make that regular disclaimer. But anyway, I better let you get on with your list, Cathy.
Okay, the next thing I wanted to recommend is getting the old-fashioned hot water bottle and using those in place of an electric heating pad. I mean, first of all, you're not using the electricity, but the hot water bottle, I don't know, there's something very comforting about those. And I think they still make them, but you don't see them that much around. But I have a couple at the house, and it would feel good on sore muscles or sore back, and you can just have them available. So that was one other item that I was looking through my cabinet the other day, and I thought, I better mention that. Yeah, I would absolutely agree there. You still see them here from time to time in Australia in the dollar stores, of all places. But as well as that, probably if you go on eBay, I'm sure that you'd find suppliers on eBay. Because you can still get
just about anything on eBay, and I think that that's an excellent alternative to Amazon, and I don't think that people should be supporting Jeff Bezos, although I do sell stuff on Amazon as well. I sell books on Amazon because there's basically no other choice. Anyway, we'll be back after the break. Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaacs speaking today with Cathy from Ohio. And can you believe, Cathy, we're actually in the last segment. That's the whole broadcast is almost at an end. But I would like to ask if there's anything you would like to say in closing, or would you like to mention just a few more items from your list? I'm just going to let you have the floor, and I'm all ears, and I'm sure the rest of the class is. You're such an interesting guest. And, yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again really, really soon. But in closing, is there anything you would like to say?
Sure, Guineith. First of all, I want to say that you've been a delight to talk with and work with, and you're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate all your suggestions. I've made notes of some of the things you've brought up also.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad I was able to help you because I didn't want to take the floor from you because you're such an interesting lady as well. And definitely the capsule machine was something I just hadn't considered. You know, it just hadn't come on my mind. Yeah.
Well, I have a couple other things I'd like to mention real quick. Castor oil is another one. I know Dr. Seeley mentioned the brand Humco, Humco. You can find it at drugstores, Walmart, and I do use that in my eyes every night. And I rub it on my eyelashes and my eyelids, and I've noticed that I believe it's worked well for me. And my eyelashes are thicker, and my skin seems to be softer. But there's many uses for castor oil. You can rub it on bumps and lumps, and you can make liver packs with it. There's a whole bunch of information out there. You can also use it. A lot of people do coconut oil with oil pulling in their mouth, but you can do castor oil, and you can use either a drop or two of clove oil when you do it, or like one small drop of oregano oil, and it's very good for dental health. So I have several bottles of the castor oil on hand because I do go through it. The other one I wanted to mention was saltwater rinses. I buy big bags of the Celtic salt. It's Redmond, Redmond, and it's like a pink and gray large granule salt. Yeah. And I'll make saltwater rinses with sterile water, and I'll put them in glass bottles, and then you can use that also as you can gargle with it if you have a sore throat, or you can just swish every day with a salt water rinse, and that's very good for oral health. You can also make an eye rinse out of it when they make those. It just has to be sterile. You have to have an eye cup and make sure everything is sterile. But if your eyes are irritated or you get something in your eye, you can make up the salt water rinse and rinse your eyes. So I have big bags of it. I think the last time I bought a bag, it was probably like a 10 or 12 pound bag. And I like it too because you can put it in a salt shaker that's got the grinder, and you can put it on your food. And from my understanding, it has a lot of trace minerals in it. So I love the Himalayan and the Celtic salt.
Yeah. I have Himalayan pink salt here in the house. You know, that's something that's just about always in my food cupboard. So it is absolutely marvelous. And there's a reason why it's a lot more expensive than your regular garden variety salt. And that's the same for the Celtic salt as well. But as well as that, it really isn't that expensive, really, is it? For what it is.
Well, I got a big bag of the Celtic salt. Now, it was the agricultural variety, but when you look at it, it's almost the same. It's just a little more coarse. And I think I bought it, the huge bag, for I think it was $10. And if you go to the store, just the little bag of the Celtic salt is like $6.99, and it might even be maybe a half a pound. So I found it at the feed store.
Yep. Wow, that's a really good idea. I think we've got music, but here's one last thing that you might want to add to your list, is a mortar and pestle. I have a mortar and pestle in my house, and I use it all the time. I use it maybe once every few days for grinding up various things that need to be put into a powdered form, mineral supplements, eggshells, medicinals for myself or for the chickens or for the horses or whatever. I use it all the time. Thank you very much for broadcasting with us, Cathy. And it's been a joy speaking with you. And I look forward to speaking with you again real soon.
Thank you.